All right, folks, Yishai Fleisher here at my Hebron studios. Mark Levin is one of America's great, he's called the Great One, right? He's one of America's great commentators, an author, columnist, syndicated radio show host, TV show host on Fox. And he was on Israel's Channel 14 in a recent interview, which I think a lot of you didn't see because it was only in Israel. And it's important because he really pushed back on some of the narratives that are out there against Israel today and that are being pushed by the American administration. Here's what he had to say.
So what do you think about the pressure that the Biden administration is putting on Israel to end the war? Instead, the Biden administration pushing for a fast international plan to establish a Palestinian state as soon as possible. How should Israel work with the American government under this pressure?
Well, first of all, that's absolute insanity. Unless Israel wants to commit suicide, it should never listen to the Biden administration. And you see, he is absolutely the worst president in American history for Americans. And so he's the worst president in American history for Israelis. Let me explain. This two-state solution is a final solution for Israel, especially given what's been taking place. You have an administration, the Biden administration, that is meeting with terrorists. You see him meeting with and talking to the head of Qatar, which has funded Hamas. Qatar is the main funder, along with Iran, of Hamas. That is shameful.
Okay, so what we're dealing with right now is the issue of allegiances. Where is the allegiance of the American administration? And it seems that after such an attack that Israel has faced, such an existential danger that Israel has from the south, from the north, from Iran, instead we're being pushed right now to do the opposite of pushing back these forces, rather to succumb to these forces, right? To give into the jihad by giving them a state that the United States is pushing to recognize unilaterally. The Israeli government has had to issue a statement saying we are not going to accept the Biden administration's push to unilaterally recognize a God forbid, a Palestine in our ancestral homeland, because that would endanger us. That would be a great win for Hamas. So where is this coming from? Is this our ally?
You think Biden should have done differently?
Resigned. That would have been a good start right there. Biden is really speeding towards the finish line with this push for a Palestinian state. As I said, there can be a Palestinian state. It's called Jordan. You want a Palestinian state? It's right there. It's called Jordan. You got your Palestinian state. But the truth is, Biden is...
All right, so before he goes on to the next point, how important is this one, which is there already is a two-state solution. There already is a so-called Palestine, and that is Jordan, right? In 1922, Britain cut out a big chunk of what was supposed to be the Jewish homeland and gave it to their friends, the Hashemites, who created the Hashemite kingdom there, the kingdom of Jordan. But in the end, it's just a Palestinian state. It's 70 or 80% Palestinian. The recent king married a Palestinian woman. That's the name they call themselves, of local Arabs. And the bottom line is that there already is a two-state solution. There was a chunk of Jewish land given away to the Arabs. There's local Arabs, so-called Palestinian, living there. And so that should be the two-state solution, should be done with. Here's their state, cut away from the Jewish land. And what Mark Levin is saying here very quickly, but it's so important, like, let's be real. There already is that you guys want a two-state solution, accept it. And let's give Arabs rights there. They could move there, live there, or they could stay in Israel as residents and be citizens in Jordan. There's many, many options, but like recognize the reality that's already on the ground instead of pushing for a hard reality, which is unacceptable, which is to give away the heartland of the Jewish state, the high ground of the Jewish state, give it away to the enemy, have them rain rockets and destruction from there onto Jerusalem and onto Tel Aviv. It's simply an impossibility. And that's exactly what the Biden administration is pushing for.
He's not going to listen to me. He's not going to listen to you folks. He's not going to listen to anybody except the radicals who are pushing this agenda. And many of them, just so people understand, are from the Obama administration.
מרק דואג להסביר לעולם מה הבעיה עם הממשל האמריקאי הנוכחי והיחס לישראל, ולא פחות מכך, איך הממשל האמריקאי עובד מאחורי הקלעים כדי לקדם יחסים עם מדינות טרור.
So you're fighting a two-war front now, a two-front war. You've got the usual terrorists in terrorist countries, and you have American diplomacy.
Ouch. Okay, so Mark Levin is equating jihadism with American diplomacy, but I think it's fair because American diplomacy is pushing towards a détente, giving a surrender to the jihad. You realize that if American diplomacy wins out, Hamas is going to declare a giant victory here, right? Because look, we created the atmosphere that would create a recognition of a Palestinian state. What a win for Hamas. But just hear those words. Mark Levin is saying we have a two-front war against jihadism and against a partner, which is American diplomacy. That is just so awful. That is just so awful and really so hard to battle. And the reality that the land wants to be, that they're trying to get us to give our land away. There's a paradigm here, which is something that Jeremy Gimpel explained to me. The paradigm is, we don't give it away to the jihadists. We give it through American intervention. Then it goes to the jihadists, right? It's like a little bit of a trick. And so that's something that has to be watched out for. It's exactly what's being pushed on right now.
You actually have Blinken coming to the Middle East, trying to organize the Arab countries against Israel. He's organizing Europe against Israel. He's organizing an effort to unilaterally represent or push for a Palestinian state. The fact of the matter is, you have a huge enemy in Joe Biden, Tony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, Thomas Friedman, and the Democrat Party, which has moved more and more and more to its Islamist wing of Tlaib, Omar, AOC, and the other reprobates.
Okay, so Mark Levin is saying that the allies is not Israel and the United States. It's not the so-called West. It's actually the progressives with the jihadis, the so-called jihad squad in the Congress, and that's the ideology that the Democrat Party is going towards, and these guys are pushing that agenda. And so he's really saying, and this is an American, he's an American, and he's saying like, wow, the American administration is an enemy of Israel because they're lined up with the wrong folks. And they're out there rallying Western Europe and other countries and the Arab states to go against Israel. And this is very much the opposite of the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords was an effort by the American president, Trump, to try to bridge a relationship between Israel and its local neighbors, the Arab neighbors, with the UAE, with Morocco, with Sudan, with Bahrain, and bridging, creating a new paradigm that actually Israel is an ally of regional Arabs. We are a similar people. We have one joint shared father, Abraham. We have a similar genetic code, similar religion, similar language, and we would do better to get over the 100-year war. But the Biden administration is pushing for jihadism to continue its march against Israel and to continue the path of the last 100 years, which has been so destructive.
Israel's war crimes? Are they investigating Hamas's war crimes, Islamic Jihad's war crimes, the Muslim Brotherhood's war crimes, Abbas's war crimes, Syria's war crimes, Jordan's war crimes? Are you kidding me? Is this what a friend does to an ally in the middle of a war? Biden protects Palestinian immigrants in the U.S. from deportation.
Okay, so another very important point, which is the blood libel that's out there right now. The big blood libel is that Israel is committing war crimes. And just like he said, are you kidding me? It's like, it's exactly the opposite. Israel is a victim of jihadist onslaught. Really, it's a victim of the last 100 years of aggression. And now we're the victim of the October 7th massacre, and they would have done more. And had Hezbollah joined in, who knows what would have happened here? That's war crimes. But the trick of the progressive jihadist alliance is that the minute we go strong against the jihad, they go into progressive mode, and instead of jihad mode, they go into progressive mode, which is war crimes, human rights. We got to protect the people, the civilians. Look at the civilian population. And their trick is that they go hard on Israel with jihad, and then they go soft when you attack them back and be like, look, we're victims. How could you do such a thing? And so that is a trick. And sadly, the American administration, and now he's going to talk about the Israelis, are in some Israelis who are in cahoots with that plan to link up progressivism and jihadism and to shrink and destroy Israel.
דווקא האנשים בתוכנו הם אלה שגורמים לפילוג הגדול ביותר במדינה.
When you have a guy like Ehud Barak, a failed former prime minister who's detested by the vast majority of the Israeli people, going all around the United States and Europe acting like he's the rational, moderate, peacemaker spokesman for the Israeli people, where he spends 90% of every interview really smearing your prime minister in the most horrific ways. You have guys like Lapid, who are as weak as they get. The American government wants him as your prime minister because they know they can roll him at every turn. You have guys like Bennett, who basically, I'm just going to be honest, kind of a chameleon. He'll take whatever side he needs to take to become prime minister. But you have these three stooges and others saying what they say outside the United States, in Europe, published by Arab press, Palestinian press, by the heinous elements of the American press. They are giving cover. They're giving support. And I want the Israeli people and those three to know, to the anti-Semites of the United States of America, to the Democrat Party in the United States of America, their war on Netanyahu is a war on Israel.
Do you think the White House is dealing with Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid behind the scenes to prepare for the day after Netanyahu?
Why are they dealing with Lapid and Gantz? It's because that's who they want. And so I'd say to the people of Israel, if Joe Biden wants Lapid or Gantz, you better open your eyes very, very wide. You know, Gantz looks like a Hollywood figure. He's a former general, good-looking guy, walks like John Wayne, but he's not John Wayne. He's not John Wayne. Lapid looks like what he used to look like. No offense, we're both on TV. He looks like a TV commentator. He's way over his head. These two guys could not lead Israel through this. You don't have, in my view, another known or significant leader, so-called in Israel, who could do what Netanyahu's doing.
What do you think?
Well, that's one of the dichotomies of Israel and Israeli leadership. And I think that this part of the interview is very candid and very honest. He's saying, look, Israel, you don't have good leaders. You want to throw off Netanyahu. You want new leadership. Okay, but do you have somebody of this caliber to stand up against the jihadist world and the progressive world, against the U.S. administration and European countries? Do you have somebody on that level? And that's also something that could be actually a critique against Netanyahu. Netanyahu, you should have trained already by now the next generation of leadership. You got to pass on the mantle. So you got to make sure that there's good people. But that's something that Netanyahu has not done. And so Israel is in a bit of a quandary. And we got to turn to God and say, Hashem, God Almighty, please help the Jewish people. Please help us have great leadership in order to lead this country forward, in order to fight off the bad guys for the next generations. So we definitely, I think that Mark Levin is very right. And he's pointing to a structural problem, a strategic problem that we have here in Israel, is that we don't have the next generation of great leaders.
Think about the aid plan that the Senate wants to pass.
The Republicans know they can't pass it this way. Okay, so they break it out and say, okay, just funding for Israel. So Biden says, no, I want all the rest of it. Israel's just a piece of it. And by the way, a small piece of it. So 14 billion, 17 billion for Israel, that's not even a grain of sand in the Sahara. It's so ridiculous.
Okay, so here the point is about American aid. And really $17 billion is very little if you think about that they're giving to Ukraine $50 billion to rearm and fight Russia in what could be considered almost a useless war and a useless loss of life. Here we're defending ourselves. But okay, I'm not here to comment on the Ukraine thing, but he's trying to say $17 billion is small compared to $50 billion that has been given for just 6 months. With all that, here is where I would say Israel actually could use less aid, less of what I call a joint development funding, because we need to be more independent. And I think this war has shown us, and I think that Obama and Biden both shown us, that Israel has to produce its own armament. Israel's got to be more independent in every way possible: energy independence, food independence, military equipment independence, and diversified, because we need to be able to not be at a strategic stranglehold by a force that may come in. Who knows who the next American president is? We could see what's happening right now. We can't have that. And it's not good for us. It's not good for Israel. Israel needs independence. And so here, I think that in some ways, in the short term, it might hurt to not get American aid. I think in the long term, that's the correct thing. That's what Israel needs. Israel needs more independence to protect itself, to defend itself. And it's also for its own spiritual, emotional health. We need to kind of grow up. We need to be our own country and stand on our own 2 feet totally.
Thomas Friedman, how much damage does he do?
Why would Thomas Friedman work for the New York Times? Because he's a self-hater, that's why. And the things that he writes has influence in the Biden administration and the Democrat Party, even though I find his columns to barely be literate, quite frankly. A guy who sits on his ass in his office at the Holocaust-denying New York Times, sitting there deciding what the Middle East should look like. Well, who voted for him? Who elected him? Nobody.
Okay, so, I got a chance to meet Thomas Friedman. I even got a chance to tour him here in Hebron. And I think Mark Levin is right in the sense that here are these guys that really don't understand the Middle East at all, because they don't understand three things about the Middle East. They don't understand religion. They don't understand God. They don't understand Middle East honor. And they don't understand deterrence. They don't understand that this is a religious region and that religion matters and history of religion matters. They don't understand that the way that you get honor in the Middle East is by giving honor. And when you give honor, you get honor. And when you demand honor, you get honor. And if you're not honorable, if you don't hold on to your land and your religious sites and stand up for what's right and hold the line, then people disrespect you. They just think of you as nothing. They dishonor you because you are lowly, because you don't stand up for God and you don't stand up for your own honor. And these people like Thomas Friedman don't understand the third thing, which is deterrence. They don't understand that you got to smash the bad guys around here, and then people respect you. That's the way to move forward, and not to succumb to their whims and negotiate with them. You got to crush them because they want to crush you. And when you crush them, everybody around says, that's a serious country. That's a country that we can work with because they're serious in defending themselves. They have honor. They have God with them. If you can't talk that way, if you don't understand that kind of lingo, then you actually don't understand how to get things done around here. And you don't understand how to get to real peace, which is through strength, through honor, and through God.
What do you think will happen in the U.S. election in November?
Well, I'm not Nostradamus. I'll give it a shot. I hope Trump wins, but they're trying to put him in prison. That's the problem with the Marxist left. That's what they do. So he's fighting that. But that said, I think Trump will win ultimately. I pray to God.
Levin.
Well, I can't comment so much about American politics because I think that my job here is to stand up for Israel and the Jewish state and the interests of the Jewish state. And I said before that we need more independence from even allies like America. At the same time, I think that President Trump does not get enough credit, not just for being pro-Israel, but for moving the ball on what pro-Israelism is. Pro-Israelism is standing up to the jihad and their assistance at the UN, UNRWA, UNESCO, all these arms, the International Court of Justice, push back against those guys and say, hey, get your hands off of Israel. We need Israel to be successful. We need it to be a channel for blessings. We don't need the world to be taken over by the jihad, which is like a black blanket of like doom over everybody and like suppression of the mind. It's the great suppression of the global mind is the jihad. We need Israel to thrive and be alive and have freedom and be successful. And the local peoples around here, the Arabs, will benefit from a pushback on the jihad. If Israel's successful, this whole region is going to flourish. And I think President Trump understood that. He understood who the real enemies are, the media and the campus and the international organizations. And he recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, which is the spiritual capital of the world, and the right to the Golan Heights and the rights of Jews to live in Judea and Samaria. And this current administration is doing everything to undermine those values.
מדגיש את התמיכה הרחבה של האמריקאים בישראל.
The vast majority of the American people stand with Israel. It doesn't matter what they march in New York or march in LA or march in Washington, D.C. There's a big America out there from sea to shining sea. And all the people in the middle, I dare say 80 to 90%, they're not talking river to the sea. They're not talking like this at all. They're not marching in the streets about obliterating the Jews or anything like this. They are pro-Israel, the vast majority of America.
Mark Levine, thank you so much.
I think it's important to say that I believe that the world is like that. I think America has more pro-Israel sentiment than maybe some other countries, but there are many others that can be allied with Israel. There is a global movement of nationalism, post and anti-jihadism, family values, biblical values. There is an access of people around the world that want these things. They're in Argentina, and they're in the Czech Republic, and in Hungary, and in Poland, and in India. There's many people around the world that want to push back on the jihad, have classical conservative values, give opportunities and freedoms to people, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of movement. They want the Bible to come to life, and they want Israel to thrive. Israel is a force of good in this world, of godly good. And there are forces who want darkness in this world. And those are the forces that you can tell who they are. They're aligned with the jihad. They're aligned with progressive values, which undermine the image of God in this world, undermine the family, undermine the Bible. And those are values that are dear to millions and millions of Americans and millions of people around the world.
Much for this interview, much appreciated. We love you here in Israel, and we hope to see you in Israel as soon as possible. Take care.
God bless you. We thank you very, very much.
All right, so that was Mark Levin here on Israel's Channel 14, a very important interview that really covered so many points, including the blood libel against Israel, of the war crimes blood libel, the danger of the two-state solution, the Jordan is so-called Palestine, and many other important points that are important. God bless you from Hebron. Have a good day.